Hello and welcome to my demonstration on how to grid a photo. For this process, you will need a reference photo. I have two and I'll explain why soon, and a pencil and a ruler. I like to use a T-square because it helps me to draw straight lines. The first step is to draw a square or rectangle around your image. Now, the first photo I have already has one. So if your photo is like this, you do not need to do this part of the process. However, if it's like the right photo, then you will need to draw a rectangle or square around your image. Once you have a square or rectangle around your image, then you will start to mark every inch on the top line and the bottom line. I'm just going to move this other reference photo out of the way because we are all on the same step, no matter which reference photo you started with. Now that I have every inch on the top and bottom line marked, I will connect them. Next, you will turn your page and do the same thing. Mark every inch on the top and bottom and connect them as well. And this will create the grid on your reference photo. Now we have to duplicate the same grid on a new piece of paper to transfer the image. So first we're going to count how many squares or inches the actual photo is. So as you can see, I'm counting and the width is 7.5 and the height is 5.5. Now I'm going to demonstrate two ways to transfer your image. The first way will be if your paper that you're going to transfer your image onto is the same size as your reference photo. If your image is the same size as your paper, then the first step will be to draw an equal sized rectangle on your new sheet of paper. So my reference photo image is 5.5 by 7.5. However, yours may be different. Since mine is 5.5 by 7.5, I will draw a 5.5 by 7.5 inch rectangle on my new paper. Now that I have my rectangle, I'm going to do the same thing I did on my reference photo, mark every inch for not only the top and bottom line, but the left side and right side line, and connect the hash marks to create the same exact grid that is on my reference photo. Here is the completed grid, and now I'm ready to start drawing my image. As I told you before, I would show you two different ways to grid a reference photo. I've just shown you how to draw a grid on the same size sheet of paper. Now I'm going to show you how to draw a grid on a paper that is much bigger. So essentially we will be blowing up the original image to a much larger size. The paper that I'm going to transfer my image onto is going to be an 18 by 24 inch paper. Before we can start gridding on a much larger sheet of paper, we need to know 3 pieces of information. The first thing we need to know is the reference photo size, and we know that my reference photo is 5.5 by 7.5 inches. Then we need to know how big the new piece of paper we are transferring onto is, and that is 18 by 24. Now, using this information, we need to figure out how many times can the reference photo fit into the larger sheet of paper. So you take 5.5 by 7.5, and I'm going to multiply it by 3 to see if my reference photo can be 3 times the size it is originally and still fit within this new paper. So as you can see, the measurement 16.5 by 22.5 does fit within the 18 by 24 inch paper. Now I'm going to try and multiply my original reference photo by 4 and see if it can still fit within the 18 by 24 inch paper. As you can see, the 5.5 by 7.5 inch reference photo cannot fit when it is multiplied by 4. However, it does fit when it's multiplied by 3. So we will make a 16.5 by 22.5 inch rectangle on this new sheet of paper. Because we are doing such a larger measurement on a large sheet of paper, you will need a larger ruler. So I'm going to get rid of this T-square and get a yardstick, which will make this a much easier and faster process. Now we will mark every 3 inches instead of every 1 inch like on our reference photo, because this is going to be 3 times as large as the original. So I'll mark every 3 on the top and the bottom, and then connect the lines like I did on the reference photo. Now I'm going to turn my paper and do the same thing for the horizontal lines. Mark every 3 inches on the top and bottom, and then connect them to create my grid. Before I celebrate that I've finally finished this grid, I'm going to check that it is correct. My original reference photo was 5.5 by 7.5 inches, so this should be 7.5 boxes by 5.5 boxes. This is 7.5 across, and now I'm going to check how high it is, and it is 5.5 high, so it perfectly matches my reference photo. I hope both of these demonstrations were helpful to you, whether you are transferring an image onto the same size sheet of paper or transferring an image to a much larger sheet of paper.